Back like we never left. It's Double Move Sports. As always, I'm Stef Albiero. I'm here with the fantasy phenom, my guy Alex Lott, and it's mock draft season, and things are happening now. Not only are we getting tape on some of these rookies, some of these guys coming back from injury, we're only a few weeks away from kickoff, and we're seeing transactions happen. Sony Michel going over to the Rams. We'll be talking about that on the show. We'll be talking about James Robinson on our next show. Things are happening, but today, Alex, I know you're hyped for this one. A 14 team, shout out to those of you who've been requesting, you dirty 14 teamers out there. We're going to do a 14 team PPR mock draft, single QB, 6 bench spots, no kicker, no defense. Alex, anything else you need to say before we get started?
I just want to say Steph and I do have our big home league draft coming up this weekend, and it is a 14-teamer. So all of you that have been requesting the 14-team mock draft, that's what we're getting into today. This is going to be helpful for Steph and I as well. It might give away, some of our strategies, some of the cards we've been holding close to the chest, to play against each other. But hang out with us throughout this podcast, throughout this mock draft, and throw the questions in the comments. We're going to stop and answer any and all questions that you all have about your rosters, about your drafts. So just because you might not be in a 14-team league doesn't mean you shouldn't stick around and hang out with us and see what happens here, because we're going to be getting into a ton of players in this mock.
And one of the biggest differences when you move to, a 14-team league is that depth matters, especially at the running back position. That's probably the biggest difference to me, is that running back scarcity is so much higher because there's so many more teams that need good running backs. And in this particular draft, I'm drafting at the 106. Alex is at the 112. Now, this is actually based on where we're at in our home league draft. So we might do some things here and there to try to replicate it. I'm actually not going to go Davante Adams, who is my keeper in that league, because I'm just going to try to go for the optimal roster strategy, optimal roster setup, which might actually end up being Davante Adams if I choose on going him over Barkley. Shout out to everybody from our Discord channel. Real quick, I want to plug that as we're waiting for some folks to get in here. If you want to talk trades, you want to talk picks, we've got guys who are literally on the clock in the redraft leagues, just like start putting messages in there like, who should I pick? Who should I pick? And not only Alex and I are in there responding, we're over 100 strong in that Discord channel. A lot of guys super active. You can join leagues with us. We got people posting open mock drafts every single night in there if you want to get practiced and ready for your redraft drafts. But for my pick at the 106, I said I wasn't going to do it, but I think I will. In this home league that we're in, it is a keeper league. You get one keeper. There's no penalty. You don't lose a round. You don't lose a draft spot. It's just a keeper. And really, the top 14 guys are always going to be kept. So for the sake of replicating my roster there, after acquiring Adams in a trade with you, Alex, that involved AJ Green many, many years ago, Adams has been my reliable keeper. And last year led me on a pretty nice playoff run. We're a few points away from making the championship. But let's go Adams here to start. Wouldn't typically recommend it when you got names like Aaron Jones on the board. That probably is who I would have went with if I wasn't trying to replicate our home league here.
It's close. It's enough for a tiebreaker. That's the thing. I think Adams is good for you because you want to practice that draft we have coming up this weekend, but it's a good tiebreaker. I mean, Saquon could have been in play. Even Kelsey, Aaron Jones, as you mentioned, would have been interesting. But I'm on the clock here at the 12 spot in this draft, and this is where it does get tough because I could go running back. I could go receiver. I could go with that JT, Antonio Gibson, Joe Mixon, Najee Harris tier of running backs, or I could take Tyreek, one of the top receivers on the board, my wide receiver one this season. And it's just really, really tough here because if I don't go running back, I know it's going to dry up so quickly. And I'm pretty much pigeonholed into taking running back for the next 2 rounds. But Steph, I think we're going to do something uncharacteristic here. Actually, no, I'm taking Jonathan Taylor. I was thinking about Tyreek Hill. It was really, really tough, really tempting. But I just know in a 14-team league with 2 starting running backs, it's so hard to not take one of these studs in the first round. So with Carson Wentz and Quentin Nelson trending up to be active for most of the season, maybe both of them by week 1, I'm going to lock in Jonathan Taylor with my first pick. In the meantime, we got a good question from our boy Hab NYC. He had Lockett and Mike Davis on his bench and Goddard as his only tight end. Traded the ETN owner. So a lot of ETN owners, if you've already drafted, are going to be looking for running backs. Might be a good time to make a move.
Hey, I'm one of those guys.
Yeah,
I just had to move for Zach Moss. Didn't
Mike
feel
Davis,
great,
Tyler Lockett, and Goddard for Darren Waller. Was that a good trade for you? Yes, I'll take the Waller side there. It's a good trade. It's a fair trade. Like if that guy's down a running back and he needs depth there and wants some other depth, like I don't blame him. But I'm out on Mike Davis this year. Steph, I know you're out on Mike Davis. And getting that upgrade at the tight end spot is so huge. So I love the trade. Well done. But I'm back on the clock here. After JT, a quick turn. Tyreek and Mahomes were in the first round. Look, in your home leagues, you might see some crazy stuff like this happen. Fantasy Pros simulation went off the rails there with Mahomes at the 114, and then Diggs and Najee Harris. So I'm back on the clock, and I could go RB, or I could dip into that receiver pool and get a stud. But I'm going to do something that I've done a lot this season, and it's just go RB, especially in these 14-team leagues. Robust running back is the way to go. That's my preferred way to play. I can get receiver value later on. So I'm going to lock in my fantasy MVP that I talked about earlier this week. It's Joe Mixon as my RB2, and I'm feeling really good in a 14-team league coming out of the first turn with Jonathan Taylor and Joe Mixon here.
Yeah, that's got to feel great. That's got to feel fantastic and very similar to probably what you're going to end up looking at in our home league draft this weekend. And after Mixon, we saw a pretty nice receiver run of DeAndre Hopkins, DK Metcalf, Calvin Ridley, Keenan Allen. And then Antonio Gibson would have loved if he had fallen to me there. But let's see who is on the board at this point. Now, to me, in a 14-team league, running back is so crucial. That scarcity, like it dries up really within like the first 4 rounds. Then you're grasping at straws. You're hoping to get a Myles Gaskin there at best. In a lot of cases, see James Robinson creeping up into that mid-range RB2 realm. That's about where we have him. It's interesting to see Darrell Henderson still at RB22. So we'll see things, the pendulum will swing back and forth. People will adjust. People will update their projections and their rankings. But for me here, kind of continuing to pound this drum on running backs in 14-team leagues, I think I'm going to go Clyde Edwards-Helaire here. It is very appealing to go Adams, A.J. Brown to start a draft. But
0 RB.
I also don't want to pigeonhole myself either into 0 RB or having to go with a running back I don't like in the third and the fourth. Like if Miles Sanders is my RB1 or maybe Chris Carson, and even then I don't feel great about it. So I'm going to get CEH. I know he's coming off that injury, but they said it's probably not a high ankle sprain. Worst case scenario, maybe he starts the year off a little bit slow, maybe misses a game or two, but should be back fine. Should be as of right now as we're recording here on August 25th. So I'm going to go CEH. I don't think much needs to really be said. I think he's going to see a big bump in passing game usage. We know he's on one of the best offenses in football. Should see more goal line opportunities. And I'm just betting on that year 2 improvement now with no Le'Veon Bell to contend with and a better offensive line, right? Bringing in Orlando Brown, some of the moves that the Chiefs made, it was phenomenal. I mean, they're going to be back in Super Bowl contention and CEH should be soaking up a lot of value. And then after Clyde, we saw some receivers. We saw Darren Waller back of the second, a guy that I've been championing everywhere, especially at this ADP. And in a 14-team league, I mean, getting Darren Waller at the 213 is pretty much like getting him in the early third in a 12-team, which is great value on that. Terry McLaurin, Allen Robinson, Jay Jets, the Waller pick, A.J. Brown, George Kittle right after him, Josh Allen at the 302, CeeDee Lamb, James Robinson, Robert Woods.
James Robinson already up to the 304, and I think you might see him start to go there. The hype is going to get out of control, and I think that's fair range. Steph, you and I were talking earlier today, where would we take Robinson? And I said right after that Swift, Carson, Montgomery, Dobbins range, and I know he's right in there for you as well, right in the mix. It's funny, you were I don't want to bring this up because I know you were making fun of someone in another league you're in who drafted James Robinson in the 5th round. You took Travis Etienne, and unfortunately, your process was right, and that guy's going to get the last laugh. So tough scene there. Pour one out for Steph in that roster. But very interesting to see where he's going in drafts. And Steph, before you pick, Hab NYC, I see your question on Jamar Chase. I wouldn't necessarily buy too much into the camp reports about drops. He's been out of football for a year. He didn't play at LSU last season. He opted out. And I know there's some stuff coming out on social media. It's a sketchy situation, but until we get concrete, real facts on that, I wouldn't buy too much into it.
When you look at Ja'Marr Chase as a prospect, he's like one of the best we've seen. Like, he should be bulletproof as far as his prospect profile. He checks almost every single box analytically. If you just look at what are those things that need to happen for guys to hit in the NFL and be solid fantasy producers. So look, maybe short term, maybe he does get off to a slow start. Is that the end of the world? Is that crushing where he's at your ADP that you're getting him? I don't think so. And remember last year, Olabisi Johnson was starting over Justin Jefferson, and we all know how that turned out. So I'm not going to overreact to camp reports. I'm not overreacting to anything in the preseason.
And the thing is, I don't know. Snaps. I don't know what's going on with the off the field situation with Ja'Marr Chase. So until the NFL or the Bengals come out with more concrete news or concrete, evidence there, I'm just going to wait and see what happens. So maybe if you're in a tiebreaker between him and other guys in the same tier, you lean the other way. But outside of that, if he's still that last guy in his tier, I wouldn't fade him too far. And I still like Higgins and Boyd just the same. So Steph, you're back on the clock. What are you thinking here now that you have locked up wide receiver, running back? And I know based on the narrative we've been laying out here so far, it sounds like running back is probably something in play for you. And I see a guy on the board that I know I would be eyeing if I were you.
Yeah, as much as I would love to go Amari Cooper here, I got to go DeAndre Swift. I got to soak up that running back value. I think you just have to. And you and I are both really high on Swift this year. He has offensive coordinators. Like, even though the Lions suck, probably offensively they're not going to be great. Okay, are we going to fade Christian McCaffrey because he's on the Panthers? No. So I'm not going to fade Swift either. He has an offensive coordinator and a head coach that have had Alvin Kamara and Austin Eckler the last 2 years. They're going to know how to use this guy in the passing game. And we're even seeing Tyrell Williams getting hurt in preseason right now. So even with Tyrell Williams, the passing game options, it's TJ Hawkinson and then just a bunch of guys that are going to be fighting for targets. You and I are really high on Amon-Ra St. Brown, but come on, this guy's not like a Mike Evans, like clear wide receiver one type guy. It's just not going to happen. So I'm going to go DeAndre Swift in a funneled volume situation, very similar to Kamara, honestly, for me. The way that offense is shaking out. Now with Adam Troutman out, it was almost a better parallel because it was funneled volume to the running back and the tight end with Kamara and Troutman. But that's now what the Lions are. So it'll be Swift and Hawkinson.
It's a great pick. And I'm on the clock. And this is how I hope a 14-team league draft would fall. Running back. And then with my third round pick, I have options. I could go Amari Cooper, Mike Evans, Cooper Kupp, lock in that wide receiver one. But if you look at the running back still on the board, you have Chris Carson, Miles Sanders, guys that if I had them as my running back three, I would be set. I would have the most running back depth in my league, and I would have a huge advantage over some of these other teams. So this is actually making it really difficult for me. But I am going to stay on brand here and go with my second fantasy MVP, which is Amari Cooper. I said in that fantasy MVP episode that if he ends up being my wide receiver one, I'm really fine with it. And after locking up Jonathan Taylor and Joe Mixon, Cooper as my wide receiver one is just fine in a 14-team league. So I'm going to lock in Cooper for the Dallas Cowboys. He's back out on the field. Dak is practicing now and looks okay. So I think all those sketchy Cowboys situations are going to end up being fine. And I'm starting out this draft really strong with JT on my Colts, Joe Mixon, and Amari Cooper, 2 fantasy MVPs. So this is going great for me so far.
And Alex, really interesting on this turn, right? I think you made the right move going with Cooper, because if you're now looking, let's just say it's Cooper, Evans, and let's just say Cooper Kupp all went off the board at this turn. You're scraping the bottom of the barrel as far as a wide receiver one. Like, can you hedge with Deontay Johnson or Tyler Lockett? Sure, but do you feel great with them as your wide receiver one? Probably not. So I think that was a great selection there. Unfortunately, you do have to pay the price because Sanders and Carson, who I know you were eyeing back at this 403, did go off the board, but at least you went double RB early, so you have the luxury of staying with the wide receiver position, and honestly, Cooper Kupp's sitting there for you.
Yeah, Cooper Kupp is there. DJ Moore is there. Deontay Johnson, Tyler Lockett. This is a tough call. I think Cooper Kupp's a great guy to pair with Amari Cooper. You and I are both big on the Rams this season with Matt Stafford. Love Tyler Lockett as well. And I'm actually going to lock in Tyler Lockett. I think the Seattle offense is going to take a step up this year in terms of their pass volume. We saw it for the first half of the year last season. I'm hopeful we can see it for the entire 2021 season. I hope they really let Russ cook for all 17 games. So if this was my real draft, Kupp, Deontay Johnson, those two guys would be in consideration because their volume plays, their floor plays, they should be much more consistent than Tyler Lockett's going to be. But I'm really shooting for upside and swinging for upside in this draft. So Amari Cooper, Tyler Lockett at wide receiver is perfectly fine to me. And I think I'm going to get those boom weeks that are going to win me a lot of games. So I'm going to lock in Lockett, no pun intended, as my wide receiver 2. We have a couple more questions. Stef, before you pick, Hab, NYC, back at it. What are you guys' thoughts on Marquez Callaway? I'm buying in. I mean, his ADP is going to continue to rise, but in double-digit rounds, if he's there, he's someone I want to take. He is putting on an absolute show in New Orleans. So based on what I've seen, if Jameis is that starter especially, I'm fine to take a flyer on Callaway. And then we have a question.
Real quick, Alex. There's like 3 things that I've taken away. Obviously, like the injury reports and the transactions that are happening with Sony Michel and all that. Like, yes, those are takeaways and things that are changing our rankings and our projections. But there's been like 3 other takeaways, which is Najee Harris is going to be just crazy. He's going to see 300 carries. Like, the way they're using him is just nuts. Jameis Winston looks to be that dude. He is showing up Taysom Hill by all like in camp reports from what we've seen in the preseason games. And then the third one is Marquez Callaway being that dude now with Adam Troutman potentially missing the first 3 weeks of the season. I like Callaway a lot in the double-digit rounds. I'm taking him over Traquan Smith, I think, at this point, just because I think there's more upside there. Callaway is a fun 100%. Prospect, man. He's electric. 100%. So I like Callaway a lot.
We have a question from Tyler. I'm looking for some good rankings since my draft strat is just pick the best available. What rankings do you guys use? Well, Steph and I do make our own rankings. We do projections. We go through everything. We don't update those publicly throughout the season, but we do keep them. We keep our rankings top of mind as we're active in our Discord. So Steph and I have our rankings. We post our tiers. We've already done running back tiers, tight end tiers, wide receiver tiers.
Go check those
Discord
out.
Channel. That's really what we're using. We're making adjustments internally, and every so often we're posting those new tiers and those new rankings in the Discord channel. So if you're not in there already, definitely join. 100 strong, and it's a great place to just keep up to date with Steph and I's latest and greatest.
Yeah, great call there. And Tyler, appreciate the question. I had a buddy actually hit me up earlier on our Discord channel. He said, hey, asking the same question, right? Do you guys have rankings? I told him, go look at our tiers, running back, wide receiver, and tight end. And then you can look at our perfect QB strategy, and that'll check all the boxes for you at every position. Watch enough of our mocks, you'll get a sense of what we like. But at the end of the day, it's up to every fantasy gamer to make those decisions for themselves. Like,
and I look at other people's rankings too.
We're not robots either, right? Like, we're not going to pick exactly off our rankings every single time.
Yeah, I look at other people's rankings too. There's a lot of different sites. There's so many different opportunities out there and different people posting content. So I try to look at other rankings just to see what different narratives could be, because you can't just get locked in on a take and stick with it. You have to open yourself up to different perspectives, and that helps you get a good sense of ADP as well. If everyone's in on a guy, everyone has them ranked above their ADP, you can guess that if you really like that guy, you might have to reach on him and vice versa. So I just kind of like to take in a bunch of different sources. And Steph and I will even tell you, go do other research outside of us. Like, you don't just want one source. We feel like we're one of the best resources out there. We're going to be, personable with you, commenting with you in the Discord, answering all your questions, all that kind of stuff. But we have to admit, like, no one has a crystal ball. So you have to do the research for yourself and make your own decisions. But Steph, we've been long-winded enough. You're back on the clock. Where are you going here in the 4th round?
This one's easy for me. And Hab just asked that question about Jamar Chase, kind of plays in the narrative. I'm going to go with T. Higgins. And before any of this Jamar Chase news is coming out, you and I both had Higgins over Chase. 2021, not in Dynasty, but for 2021, absolutely. Because Higgins balled out last year. Just a lot of people didn't see it because it was down the stretch. A lot of folks who weren't paying attention, they were already out of contention in fantasy. They really weren't watching the Bengals without Joe Burrow play and watching T. Higgins be 10th in the league in deep targets, watch him put up 900 yards with horrible offensive line and quarterback play. T. Higgins is the new AJ Green. They're both 6'4", 215, profile the exact same. I'm taking T. Higgins and banking on him ascending in year 2 with an offense that should be pretty fun, pretty explosive. Hopefully some of those O-line moves that they made, Riley Reif, going Cartman in the draft.
Jackson
Hopefully
Carman,
can do enough for us, yeah.
So, Steph, after Higgins, we saw Hawkinson, DJ Moore, Darrell Henderson still going at the 4-12 in a 14-team league. So I'm sure we'll continue to see him fall a little bit with the Sony Michel trade. And then Mike Davis, Brandon Ayuk, Jerry Jeudy, Chase Claypool, Mark Andrews, Jamar Chase at the 504, and Dak Prescott. You're back on the clock. I'm really liking what you're putting together here. Devontae Adams, T. Higgins, CEH, DeAndre Swift. You have 2 running backs, 2 receivers. You could really go a lot of different directions here. What's it going to be?
Interesting. Yeah, this is a borderline dead zone for me at running back. Like I really don't want Kareem Hunt. I liked Myles Gaskin a lot more in the offseason, but I don't know, man. More questions are coming up. His snap share doesn't seem that
up and down, man.
Doesn't seem that secure. I think he'll be the pass catching back. But who really knows, goal line wise, is it going to be Malcolm Brown? Is Salvon Ahmed going to take double-digit carries every week? And then we're looking at Gaskin as like an 8-carry, 4-target type guy, like in Austin Eckler minus. So I don't know. And then if we look at wide receiver, a lot of names on the board I do like. Same thing at QB. Now, I am eyeing this Aaron Rodgers stack because I have Davante Adams. But I think it's still too early to go Rodgers here. Where are we? Mid-5th. This is one of those tough ones because I can go anywhere. Part of me does want to go Javonte Williams. I've started to curb my enthusiasm on Chase Edmonds a little bit. I think I am going to go Javonte. Give me that upside. Give me that robust RB type strategy.
Wow.
And this is truly a league-winning pick. Normally, I would have gone ETN here, to be honest with you. He was the guy that I was targeting in this range where, look, there's plenty of fine wide receiver 2s still there. Tight end at this point, we're punting the position. The top 5 guys are gone. No point in wasting a pick on a Noah Fant or Logan Thomas this early. And then, again, it's too early for QB, especially in a single QB league. So give me Javonte for that upside. Last year we saw, in the cases of Jonathan Taylor with Marlon Mack, in the case of J.K. Dobbins with Mark Ingram, what the NFL has shown us is when they draft a running back early, and Javonte Williams, they traded up for him in the 2nd round. Like, they're going to put the pedal to the metal with this guy. I forget the exact stat off the top of my head, but I believe it's something like 60% of running backs taken in the 2nd round are RB2s or higher in year 1. So I think Javonte is going to be one of those guys that just explodes onto the scene down the stretch. And now I feel great at my running back
pick.
Can address wide receiver in these next couple rounds. And unfortunately, Rodgers did go off the board, so that sucks.
That's tough. But after Javonte, Logan Thomas, Juju, Kenny G, Myles Gaskin, and Aaron Rodgers. Hey, shout out to Brown Mamba in the chat. What's up, man? And we got a couple questions. We got to crank through a couple more rounds because we are lagging a little behind on the mock, and then we'll get to some of these questions. Brian, Xer, we'll hit on those here in a second. We just got to keep moving through this mock. We don't have 4 hours tonight, unfortunately. But I'm in this kind of dead zone of wide receivers that we've talked about before. I think the value of wide receiver is great back around 3 into round 4, even early round 5, guys like Claypool, Jamar Chase. But then you get into this dead zone with the Odell Beckhams, Robbie Anderson, Tyler Boyd, Debo, DJ Chark, Will Fuller. None of those guys really get me super excited. I think they'll be fine. But I'm almost more willing to wait and go with an Antonio Brown, Devontae Smith, Laviska Shenault, Curtis
Russell
Samuels.
Wilson stack for you?
So, yeah, I'm thinking about Russell Wilson in the 5th. If he falls to the 6th, I think I'll definitely take him. But I'm going to go ahead and lock in an RB3. It is a 14-team league. Running back depth is going to be really important. And I might not end up with a lot of running backs on my roster if it gets super thin at the end. So I'm going to take the perfect RB3. There's really 2 perfect RB3s. One is Kareem Hunt, and that's who I'm going to draft. The other one's Chase Edmonds, Kareem Hunt light in a way. Very different situation, but what I think I'm getting in Hunt, he's not a guy I have to start every week. He's going to add depth. I can play him even if Chubb is active and healthy in a pinch. And like we saw last year, if Chubb does go down, Hunt's volume is going to be enough to make him a viable fantasy starter. He didn't quite give us the upside we wanted with that opportunity, but we know the volume's going to be there. So I went ahead and locked in Kareem Hunt as my RB3. And wow, Team 13 just did me dirty with Laviska Shenault right there at the 513. He's someone I had my eye on coming back around to get my 3rd fantasy MVP, but I couldn't do it. Great pick, Team 13. I respect that. And then Tyler Boyd, Robbie, and Damian Harris. So I'm back here at the 603. And I'm really looking at wide receivers. I feel good at running back right now. I'm looking at the wide receiver spot. LaVisca would have been in play. We got AB, Devontae Smith, Odell, Cortland Sutton, Brandon Cooks, all in consideration. Russell Wilson is there. I'm going to roll the
Wilson stack, bro.
Yeah, I'm going to roll the dice here. I said I was going to pick him if he came back around. Stacking, we've talked about how important it is in fantasy football, especially this season. It's something we're focusing on. So I'm going to lock in Russell Wilson with Tyler Lockett, get that stack, get that weekly upside. Because when I take Tyler Lockett, I'm saying I think Russell Wilson's going to have a good season. So this just puts that correlation together. And it gives me Russell Wilson as my quarterback. So I'm feeling great about that one. Yeah, after dude, Russ, we saw Thomas,
one of those things
Herbert,
too.
Sutton, Edmonds, and Odell go off the board.
Yeah, well, I was looking at Sutton and Edmonds at this next pick, and Herbert. Dang. So one thing to throw out there, like there's a direct correlation between how much Russell Wilson has passed the ball and the numbers that Tyler Lockett's put up. There's, we saw whether it was smoke or fire, who knows, but Russell Wilson kind of threatening at the end of the season last year, like, hey, I'm going to leave or I'm going to demand a trade. Hopefully some of that stuff parlays into Russell Wilson throwing the ball a ton more. So I love that stack.
Yes.
The fact that you got that on your roster feels great. I have that in a ton of best ball drafts, and I feel great about it. And a lot of people don't know Tyler Lockett out-targeted and out-receptioned DK Metcalf last year. A lot of people don't think about that, but let's see who is on the board. And Alex, we'll crank through some of these questions in a minute. Man, we're still in this dead zone. I do like Trey Sermon, but the fact that I took Javonte is making me want to hold off a little bit. Where are we right now? Is this what? 7th, 8th round, 6th round? Wow. Yikes. I guess it is 14 team.
14 league, so team. It's drying up quick.
I know it is. It truly is, man. That was definitely the LaVisca Chenault range right there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go AB and just get my what is this? My RB3 at this point in the draft.
I love it.
For those who don't know, I think, we've mentioned this, I think, every time we brought up AB, but I mean, in that last half of 8 games, you saw a higher target share than Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. So look, am I going to know exactly what weeks to plug AB in? I'm sure I can stream him based on matchup, but who knows, man? If one of those two guys go down, or if Tom Brady just dials in on AB like we saw many, many times last season, this could be potentially a league-winning pick. I know AB's old, but he's not fully washed yet. But Alex, let's hear a quick word from our sponsor before we answer some of these chat questions. Appreciate you guys sticking with us. Oh, wait, Alex, I have to stop the show because I'm dumb hyped over this new sponsorship deal we got. Shout out to our guys over at Manscaped. And look, I was skeptical, but Alex, I've been a very hairy guy for a long time. I was the kid at 13 years old in middle school.
Oh, yeah.
With chest hair showing out of the polo shirt. Like, I was that dude.
I was jealous at the time.
Well, nothing to be jealous over anymore, because ever since I got this lawnmower 4.0 from them, it's been clean down there, to say the least.
Manscaped has the lawnmower 4.0, not the 1, not the 2, not the 3, but the 4.0. Talk about sleepers on our show, and this has to be one of the best sleeper products out there. I was skeptical as well, and it's been an absolute game changer. Check out Manscaped. This thing is legit, and you will definitely not be disappointed by this full body trimmer. It's incredible.
So Manscaped was nice enough to give us a 20% off discount code for the Double Move Sports viewers. You can get 20% off and free shipping with code DMS at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Use code DMS, unlock your confidence, and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped. Now back to the show.
Shout out to Manscaped. But we're back. And let's get into some of these questions, Stef, before we move on. We'll start with Brian. I know you've been waiting for a while, Brian. Brian says, all my leagues this year are PPR, 5 bonus points for 100 yards rushing, receiving, and 300 yards passing. How much would this alter your draft strategy? Honestly, with the rushing, receiving, probably not a ton. Those consistent players, those guys that do go for yards, the DJ Moores of the world become more valuable. You have to look at these players and how they get their fantasy points. Some guys predicate themselves on touchdowns, some guys on yards. Julio Jones in years past has been a yards guy, has struggled in touchdowns. So those guys become more valuable because they can give you those pop weeks. And rushing the ball, it's just more of a volume thing. Like maybe Damian Harris, it becomes more valuable. Maybe Josh Jacobs becomes more valuable. Some of these running backs that aren't as involved in the receiving game that do really make their hay on the ground with volume, with touches, those guys become a little bit more valuable, and it evens the playing field. So that's it for me. But really with the passing, because he also says there's 6 points for passing touchdowns, it makes those pocket passers more valuable. The cheat code in fantasy these days is getting that rushing baseline. But the Matt Staffords, the Matt Ryans, the Tom Brady's, all these guys that stand in the pocket and throw for 300 yards a game actually become much more interesting as top tier guys. Aaron Rodgers comes into the top 5 for me if that's the case, because he's going to give you a lot of those touchdowns, those 2 extra points. He's going to give you the bonuses with the passing yards. So if anything, it makes some of those pocket passers more valuable, takes some of the premium off of the rushers. And in terms of the rushing and receiving, I think you just have to go for those yardage guys. It kind of evens the playing field and makes touchdowns less of something that can skew your data based, on if a guy goes for 10 touchdowns or 4 touchdowns, it can make or break you in fantasy. But with that rule in place, it's actually going to make everything kind of regress to the mean a little bit.
Well put. Well put. Are there any other questions in there before we move on?
Yeah, let's hit on Xeri here. This one I'm going to have to slow down for. So CMC and Zeke or Chubb, or CMC and D-Hop or Hill or Diggs. So it sounds like CMC's locked in, and he's got the option to go with Zeke or Chubb, so go RB, or he can go with McCaffrey and take one of these elite receivers, D-Hop, Tyreek, or Stephon Diggs. 10-team PPR. So you're already in a great spot with CMC. I personally, if you have the chance at CMC Zeke, I'm locking that in. If it's not CMC Zeke, it would be Tyreek Hill for me. But it's really a preference thing. You have CMC locked in at running back. Go with a guy you believe in. Look at rounds, 3, 4, 5. See which guys you think are going to be on the board and base your draft around that. I don't think there's really a wrong pick here. We'll hit on a couple more. They're really rolling in. Brown Mamba. What is the ceiling for Laviska Shenault? Hasta Laviska, baby. I got to make that my team name this year if I can pick him up in my draft. That's great. But I said it in our fantasy MVPs episode. I think his true ceiling, like best case scenario, is a top 12 wide receiver. Because if he is the number 1 in Jacksonville, if the pass volume is there, they were 7th in pass attempts last year. If he is that number 1 with a more efficient quarterback in Trevor Lawrence, he could be a top 12 guy. I think that's his upside. If he can hit on some touchdowns as well, he can get there. But as is, I think he's going to be in that wide receiver 2 range. So I think he does have a decent floor. He's that volume guy. We've seen him super involved in the preseason. Not buying too much into that. Don't want to overreact, but it's great to see. So all in on Laviska. And now we're going to rake through a couple more questions here. Actually, looks like this is the last one from JT Finkbonner. Pick 3 and pick 5 in the first round of a keeper league, RB or RB wide receiver. Well, this is tough because if there's keepers involved, it all depends on who you've got. I would say with those picks, make sure in your keeper league, you are coming out of those picks between your keepers and those 2 picks with at least 2 strong running backs. Don't go out of those without 2 strong running backs. Outside of that, just go with who you like on the board and who's available. It all depends on who other people keep.
Yeah, great point there. But Alex, after I took AB, Devonta Smith, Tom Brady, Brandon Cooks, Corey Davis is creeping up draft boards right now. Corey Davis is fun. Dude, Zach Wilson's also looked good too. We'll talk about a lot of these guys on our shows next week. Michael Carter at the 614, Ryan Tannehill, Deebo Samuel, Jalen Hurts. I got sniped on Hurts, and it sucks. It sucks. He would have been my pick here.
Steph, question for you. You say if Hurts falls to the 8th round in our typical 12-team leagues, it's an auto smash. So in a 14, I'm guessing round 7, that's your move.
Typically, yeah. And it always depends on who's on the board. But at this point, it's like AB. I can probably get a filler guy who's like in that range with AB. I mean, wide receiver 2s are a dime a dozen. I could go Will Fuller. I could go Curtis Samuel. I could go Cortland Sutton. I could go DJ Chark. Like, give me any of those wide receiver 2. Just hope they hit. And let me get Jalen Hurts, because now I'm kicking myself because I'm going to have to just punt the QB position altogether at this point. And it's the 7th round, and I'm still really not looking at quarterback based on who's on the board. I also want to say Trey Sermon was sniped from me here as well. He would have been a smash play. Really, the last 3 picks, Hurts, Chark, Sermon, cut me real deep. But let's see who else is here. At running back, the only guy that excites me when we're looking at least the Fantasy Pros consensus rankings, there's two in this initial tier. It's Zach Moss and Leonard Fournette. All the other guys, take it or leave it. I don't really care. They're plotters. They're not giving me much. So I'm actually going to go with the wide receiver here and just take the best available to me, who I believe is Will Fuller. Yes, he's suspended week 1. I don't need to start on week 1 based on how this roster is panning out. I will gladly slot in AB in week 1 against the Cowboys and let Fuller sit the bench. And so with Will Fuller, to me, it's look, I believe in Tua. I think he has an upside. If he can do what he did in college, he's going to do exceptional things. He had an incredible deep ball in college. Let's hope now, another year away from injury with a proper offseason, he can step up. And so this belief on Will Fuller really comes down to my belief in Tua, because we know what Will Fuller is. He's one of the best deep threats in the entire NFL over the last 5 years, led the entire league in yards per target last year. Let's just hope he can be that strong, stable, downfield wide receiver 1 for Tua to ascend with.
It's great. And you drafted him as your wide receiver 4, which I actually answered a question on one of our YouTube videos today. Someone was asking my opinion on Will Fuller, and it was, I love him as a wide receiver 4, someone I don't have to start every single week. We know he's struggled with injuries. He is suspended for the first game. He's already been in and out of practice. But if he's my wide receiver 4 and in the right matchup when he's healthy, I can start him. It's a great pick for some upside on your team. But after Fuller, we saw Stafford, Burrow, Landry, Mike Williams, and Jalen Waddle go. I only have 2 wide receivers right now, and Amari Cooper and Tyler Lockett. So that's where I'm looking. And it's not just because he's the top name on the board, but this is an easy pick for me at the wide receiver spot. Someone I know you're all in on, Stef, and that I'm excited about too. It's Curtis Samuel for Washington. He has been out of camp with an injury, but I still expect him to get up to speed quickly. He's played for Ron Rivera in the past, so I know he's going to have a big role in this offense. Ryan Fitzpatrick's there. He's going to get utilized in crafty ways in Washington. So as a guy I can flex, I have him and Kareem Hunt right now as flex options. I'm feeling pretty good about having Curtis Samuel as a wide receiver 3 at this value in a 14-team league, a guy who has a ton of upside. And then on that turn, we saw Pittman, Raheem Mostert, Melvin Gordon, and Michael Gallup go off the board. So I'm back on the clock with 3 running backs, 3 receivers, and a quarterback. So I could really go any direction here. So I'm kind of scanning the board. I know running back is going to dry up pretty quickly. There are a ton of upside wide receivers I can take even in 14-team leagues. Like it seems like in our 12-team mocks in the last round, there's 10 wide receivers I wish I could have. So in a 14-team, I know I can stack running backs while they're still valuable, while they're involved. Ronald Jones, a Zach Moss, like you mentioned, a Leonard Fournette, guys we know are at least going to get touches and have some sort of value. I want those now, because if I wait and I'm deciding between, Salvon Ahmed, Tevin Coleman, Rashad Penny, those guys have an avenue to fantasy value, but it's just a long road ahead. So I'm going to go ahead and lock in my 4th running back. Who knows if it'll be the last running back I take in this draft, but I'm getting my boy Ronald Jones. He's on Tampa. I know it's a crowded backfield, but he's a great runner. He should be a guy I can plug in if I absolutely need to and hope for 80 to 100 yards and a touchdown. And we've talked about it for Fournette and Rojo, and it looks like a couple of your guys just got sniped. But for Fournette and Rojo, if one or the other misses a game or is inactive the 17-game season, it's bound to happen. The one that's left standing that's active on the roster is entering must-start territory for some of these deeper leagues. Steph, I can't believe Moss and Fournette just got sniped from you. But there is one guy on the board at running back who I know you like. He's a little bit further down. There's actually 2. So I'm interested to see if you take one of the guys I'm thinking of.
Yeah, I'll be all right. Because the pick here to me is easy. I don't have a QB yet, and the names are drying up. And there's a guy that I've had circled everywhere, a guy that I think everyone should be eyeing, especially in your home leagues where people are not quite as bullish on the rookies. It's T-Law. I'm going with T-Law. I've seen mixed things on him in the preseason, but he's mobile. Rough. He was actually rushing the ball quite a bit and actually taking some hits in the last game. A little too much. Yeah, he needs to chill a little bit. Urban might rip him a new one for that. But having T-Law just feels great. It gives me the upside. Look, you got to go for these young quarterbacks that might ascend with draft capital and rushing potential, to me, Trevor Lawrence comps very closely from a fantasy perspective, not necessarily from who they are as players, but from what he's going to do to put fantasy points on the board. I put Trevor in line with Justin Herbert. I essentially see that as me getting Justin Herbert here at the 809 if he hits. If he doesn't hit, if he sucks, if he gets hurt, whatever, I'll just cut him at this point and pick up somebody off the waiver wire. Certainly going to be eyeing some later QBs as well to hedge, just in case T-Law does take some time to get ramped up. And wow, this handcuff run after T-Law. So we saw Kenyon Drake, Elijah Moore, David Johnson, Sony Michel, Nyheim Hines, Jamal Williams, Devontae Parker snuck in there, and then Devin Singletary. And this one hurt. A.J. Dillon got picked. That would have been the smash for me. Yep. Gus Edwards is the other guy. A.J. Dillon, Gus Edwards, and Tony Pollard, who is my pick here. Those are the guys that we're eyeing when we're in these rounds. And look, yes, Darnell Mooney is an exciting upside play. Don't draft McCole Hardman because you'll never know when to start him. A lot of these other guys are just floor or upside plays like a Jacoby Myers. He's fun. He's rising up boards, but there's a clear drop-off after Tony Pollard here. Where, like, I don't have any of these other running backs on my roster. So I'm going Pollard. I'm going to feel great about it. I love Pollard as a player. We love the Cowboys offense. We love their schedule. Love everything about them. Love that their defense is terrible. So shout out to the Cowboys. How about them Cowboys?
That was one of those guys last round. It was him and A.J. Dillon were actually the two I thought you'd be interested in. So I'm glad one of them fell back to you after the T-Law pick. And really quickly, I just want to mention Sony at the 8-13 in a 14-team league. You and I are still kind of pinning down where we're going to have Sony in our rankings. We don't want to overreact, but I think this is right where he should be going. We've talked about he's in that handcuff tier. I would probably prefer him over David Johnson, over Kenyon Drake is close, but like that Kenyon Drake, James Conner range is fine for me. I think in some of these leagues, people are going to overreact, say he's the starter, he has name value. He's probably going to end up going in the 7th round of your drafts, and he's just going to rise too much to be worth the risk at that point. I think there's a world where Sony Michel has a good season, but there's just other guys I'm willing to bank on in that range. But after Tony Pollard went Marvin Jones, Phillip Lindsay, Noah Fant, Alexander Madison, and Mecole Hardman. So I'm glad I locked up Rojo last round because, to your point, the running backs have gotten disgusting. And there's plenty of wide receivers I still like. There's tight ends I still like, and I still need a tight end. This is why you wait on tight end if you don't get an elite guy. But at the receiver spot, there's a couple guys I like. I like Darnell Mooney's upside. You and I were just talking about him recently, and he's got a shot, but he might be more hype than reality this season. You know, we definitely think he has a chance. All these guys have a chance, though, because you got your Henry Ruggs, your Jacoby Myers, Jamison Crowder is in New York. He's more of a floor play. Russell Gage is there. He's a floor play. So now I'm looking at the board, and there's upside options. There's floor options, Cole Beasley as well. So now it's what do I need for my team? And this late in drafts, I don't want a guy that's going to come in like a Cole Beasley and maybe give me 10 points a week. I'm shooting for the moon, no pun intended. So I'm going to go ahead and lock in Darnell Mooney. I don't think it's a lock that he hits, but he has a lot going for him. Had a good rookie season, showed a lot of flashes, had an accurate quarterback play as a rookie, and now we know he's going to get an upgrade at the quarterback spot. So whether it's Andy Dalton, if Andy Dalton's the starter for more than 4 games, it means he's playing well. And if it's not Andy Dalton, it's Justin Fields, which is definitely an upgrade. So Anthony Miller's gone. He's going to be the clear number 2. Locking in Darnell Mooney as an upside play. And wow, one of the guys I wanted did go off the board. Henry Ruggs was going to be the guy coming back to me, just take back-to-back shots on wide receivers. But Tunyon, Ruggs, Goddard, and McKissick came off the board. So I'm actually going to go to tight end. The last tight end in this specific tier for me, it's Tyler Higbee. I was big on him last year, but now in LA with Gerald Everett gone, with Matt Stafford in, he gets the upgrade at quarterback, has more opportunity with that tight end target share. So I'm going to lock in Higbee. I'm getting him. What round are we even in? Like the 10th round? Yeah, I'm getting him in the 10th round. So I might circle back to tight end and take a flyer later on, but I'm going to have Higbee. He's going to be my starter to start out the season, and I'll probably try to take an upside guy later on and see if he can hit for me.
Yeah, Higbee there, just tremendous value. Gesicki as well, honestly. And that actually plays in closely to my next pick. So looking at the board, let me just spot check a few things before I pull the trigger. Oh, man, it's Irv Smith and Jonnu and Evan Ingram. I'll probably just settle with one of those guys after this pick at tight end because I want to take another upside shot. And I want to go for a cheap mini stack here. And I'm going to go with Tua. It might be a controversial pick to some people. I just think he is ready to take that next step. And look, at this point in the draft, if he sucks, I'll just drop him. I'll just cut him.
Yeah.
But I like hedging on Trevor Lawrence with Tua. I think we're going to know within the first couple of weeks whether if he is ready to ascend and take that next step, or if he's just going to continue to struggle like he did at times in year one. But even he is a guy who has sneaky rushing upside. We saw him have multiple rushing touchdowns in some games, and in the right game script, he's a fine streamer. So at worst, I'm just getting a guy I can start in the right matchup. We saw him have some big games against the Chiefs, against the Bills last year, even if the Miami Dolphins themselves weren't an electric offense with him back there. And let's see who else went. Wow, it is handcuff season, because after Tua went, it was Rashad Bateman, Ernst Smith, Russell Gage, James White, AJ Green, and then running backs the rest of the way. Tevin Coleman, Tariq Cohen, Darrell Williams, Kenneth Gainwell, Chuba Hubbard. Chuba is an interesting one. He's definitely a guy that you can take in one of the last rounds here. In this particular draft, we're not doing kicker or defense, so just want to throw that out there since we are at the end of the draft. And at this point, we are just taking upside shots on guys that we like, filling out our rosters. Jonnu Smith is the pick for me. I threw this out there in our bold predictions. I think next year I have a hot take that Jonnu Smith will be the clear tight end 5 or tight end 6. He'll be in that top tier with those guys in Dynasty. When Mac Jones becomes a starter, they're dishing the ball down the field. They're dishing the rock, just passing a lot more without Cam Newton there. And Jonnu Smith is a freak athlete. I'm not scared of Hunter Henry. A guy can't stay healthy, unfortunately. So, and Hunter Henry's already hurt in camp right now. So Jonnu Smith going into the year, he can be like a reliable like touchdown or bust option for Cam Newton, but could be a safety valve in the short, quick passing game. And he is a freak with the ball in his hands, super athletic, big athletic specimen. So he's the flyer upside tight end for me, unfortunately, with Adam Troutman getting hurt.
And after Jonnu, you had the one tight end in this round because it was more deep running backs. Salvon Ahmed, Malcolm Brown, Devontae Booker, Marlon Mack, Damian Williams.
And real quick, this is what you should be doing at this range in your draft. If you have 4 or 5 very good wide receivers, you got your quarterback, you got your tight end, go get those running backs because crazy things happen. And before you know it, who knows, man? Maybe Salvon Ahmed is taking over when Raskin gets hurt in preseason.
You're essentially taking lottery tickets at this point because of this huge running back group. All the names are kind of nasty. Like most of these guys aren't going to hit, aren't going to be fantasy relevant. But of this bunch, Tevin Coleman, Darrell Williams, Gainwell, Chuba, Salvon Ahmed, Malcolm Brown, Marlon Mack, Rashad Penny, Latavius Murray, maybe James. Like I'm sure one of these guys at some point is going to have some extreme value just based on what we've seen in years past. So definitely a time for lottery tickets. But for me, Steph, I would much rather take shots on wide receivers that I can see clearly in week 1, week 2. Are they involved in the offense? Are they getting targets? Are they getting snaps? And if not, I can cut them. And if they are, I know I have something really special. Or with some of these running backs, it's all situational and there's so many other factors. And there's 3 wide receivers I really love right here in drafts. One is Paris Campbell. Been well documented with that one. 2 is Brian Edwards in LA or in Las Vegas, excuse me. I think he's going to be fantastic this season. He is slated to be starting. And 3 is Marquez Callaway. We've seen the flashes in the preseason. And my guess is if anyone in your league's been keeping up with training camp with the preseason, he'll be off the board by now. So I'm going to go ahead and take Paris Campbell. He is one of my top dogs this season as a sleeper, as a breakout. Just to stay true to that, I'm going to go ahead and make sure I lock him in. When it gets around this turn, we'll see between Callaway and Brian Edwards who I decide to go with. It looks like Xavier Jones, who probably isn't going to get drafted very often now after the Sony trade, Mark Ingram, Gronk, and Jerick McKinnon. So it's back to me, and I'm going to take Marquez Callaway from the New Orleans Saints and see if he is anything special this season. He's got a great opportunity with Michael Thomas out. He does look like the de facto number 1. And now with Troutman slated to potentially miss time, he could be, a 10 target a game guy for the first several games of the season if the Saints get into some shootouts.
Yeah, great pick there. Callaway is that dude. I think, to your point, like he'll probably go in this, AJ Green range on this particular draft just because people are privy. And Troutman's going to miss the first 3 weeks. He would normally be my pick here. Let's see who is on the board. Ooh, interesting. I'm going to go Blake Jarwin here And the reason I like Blake Jarwin is just the situation. I love the Cowboys offense for fantasy. Their defense is awful. They're not stopping anybody. Dak was throwing the ball 35 plus times a game last year, and they were in these boat races every single week, it felt like. Now you add in the fact that they're in the NFC East and crossing over with the AFC West. So they're playing the Chiefs.
It's nice.
They're playing the Chargers. Like, dude, it's hype all over the board. And so, look, I don't love Blake Jarwin, the talent. I like Blake Jarwin, the situation. And people are acting like because he got hurt last year that he's just nothing now. And while Dalton Schultz was fine, doesn't scare me that much. Jarwin is the upside sleeper shot for me. Last pick in the draft, who are we going with?
A lot of options at wide receiver. Also, as we're winding down, if you're still live with us, like throw some questions in the chat. We're going to wind it down. We'll recap our rosters, do a quick review, and we're going to be out of here. But before we do head out, if there are outstanding questions here at the end, like we will be sure to hit on all those before we sign off. Steph, with this last pick, I mean, you could really go any direction. The running backs are pretty nasty. So I'm guessing unless a guy sticks out to you that I'm unaware of, it's going to be a receiver here, but we'll see.
Yeah, actually, from in the running back range, it's Ty Johnson and Anthony McFarland. But Benny Snell is still there, so I'm not sure if Najee did get hurt for whatever reason, he'd be the guy. Ty Johnson, I just like him as a player, as a talent. I think he is a sneaky name to keep an eye on because he could be the pass-catching, explosive back that's there. But you're right. I am going to go wide receiver, and I'm just going to bank on a guy that I've liked throughout the entire draft process, a guy that I think is an exceptional talent. He's on an offense that runs the most 4 wide receiver sets and has the highest pace of play in the NFL, and it is Rondale Moore.
Nice.
He's coming for that Chase Edmonds check down job. You heard it here first. This kid's a mini spark plug. He was just nasty as an 18-year-old freshman in college. We could gush all day about what he did in college, but Rondale Moore's the pick here at the end of the draft.
I like it. And with my last pick, I could go any direction too. There are receivers I still like: Brian Edwards, Terrace Marshall, Amon-Ra St. Brown. And then at the tight end spot, I only have Tyler Higbee, and there's some interesting names. Troutman is hurt, so I'm fading that. But yeah, Cole Kmet is there. Even an Anthony Ferkser might get involved. I don't know. Dan Arnold, I think, might get involved, but I'm not going to draft any of those guys because I think I can wait. And if one of those guys does pop off week 1, if I feel like tight end's an area of need, I can go out and grab one if I truly believe in what I saw the first week of the season. So with this last pick, I want someone that I need to get ahead of the waiver wire on in my league, and it's going to be a quarterback. And it's something we've talked about a lot. I know I have Russell Wilson on this team. When I look at the board, you have to think who could actually provide you potential fantasy value or trade value in any way at some point during the season. And the tight ends are super deep. I mean, we are talking about Anthony Ferkser and Dawson Knox. And then that running back, like, is Anthony McFarland or Josh Kelly really going to help you? Like, what does it take for those guys to have long-term fantasy value? And it's like a million different things. So I'm actually going to go quarterback. I'm going to go with Justin Fields because I think when he does take over for Andy Dalton, I think it's going to be sooner rather than later. I know I have Russell Wilson, but I can keep him on my bench. And if he pops off in his first start, I can either trade Russell Wilson for a haul and move forward with Fields, or a quarterback needy team, someone who wants that quarterback upside, is going to come to me for Justin Fields. And I should be able to get some value that's more valuable than Justin Jackson, Josh Kelly, or Wayne Gallman. So I'm going to take Fields because I think he does provide some sort of clear path to fantasy value sooner rather than later in the 2021 season.
Perfect way to end a draft. We don't care about Fantasy Pros grades. Let's look at our rosters here. Let's go through everything. I'll go through mine first. Trevor Lawrence at quarterback. I have Tua sitting the bench. Then I have CEH, DeAndre Swift, Javonte Williams, Tony Pollard as my running back core. That's probably the weakest part of my roster, or probably outside of tight end, but I honestly don't even hate it. I think there's a lot of
not bad
upside here. And really, if just one or two of these guys break out, this is the championship roster. And then at wide receiver, I feel fantastic. Devontae Adams, T. Higgins, Will Fuller, Antonio Brown, Rondale Moore as a flyer. And then at tight end, just took some shots. I'll probably end up streaming them in this particular redraft league because it's Jonnu Smith and Blake Jarwin. Honestly, not much I would have changed here. Would have loved to see how things played out if I did go A.J. Brown in that second round, but I think I would be hating my running back core a lot more if I did do that, and getting T. Higgins as my wide receiver too. I mean, he's the perfect name as a wide receiver too because I think he has insane upside, could be the number one in Cincy, so that feels great there. If Williams hits, if Pollard hits, I'm taking this thing to the house.
I love it. And I'll recap my roster real quick, Steph. I do like yours a lot. You have some serious strength everywhere, and you have some upside on your bench. That's always what you want. You want strength in your starting lineup, upside on your bench. My lineup is Russell Wilson at quarterback with Justin Fields waiting in the wings on my bench. Running back, I have Jonathan Taylor and Joe Mixon, so a really strong combo in 14 team with Kareem Hunt and Ronald Jones for some depth. At wide receiver, I have Amari Cooper and Tyler Lockett. So historically, guys that have been boom bust. Amari Cooper, I think, is more of a secure wide receiver one. Lockett's probably going to have his swings. And then for my flex options, it could be Curtis Samuel, Darnell Mooney, Paris Campbell, Marquez Callaway. So a lot of upside at the wide receiver spot. Could always go back and flex Kareem Hunt if I need to as well. And then I just snagged Tyler Higbee at the tight end position. But I'm kind of with you. I like this team a lot. And it's interesting because I did wait on tight end. It's a strategy we've been talking about. If we don't get an elite guy, you wait on tight end, and that worked out for me in Higbee. I was able to get the stack with Russell Wilson, Tyler Lockett, taking Russell Wilson. I think it was the 6th round. And then at the running back spot, I was able to lock in Joe Mixon, who's one of my fantasy MVPs. I got my boy JT. I'm a Colts fan, so that was awesome. I think his upside is there with Wentz and Nelson tracking to playing early in the season and got some depth there as well. So I like this roster. Anytime you do start out running back, you might feel like your upside at wide receiver is a little weak, but because everyone's tending to fade Amari Cooper right now, I actually feel pretty good about that core as well. So not a bad 14 team draft. Not a lot I think I would have changed either on this one.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat. Maybe grabbing that Aaron Rodgers stack with Adams, probably the only thing that I would change outside of just seeing how things would have shaken out. But who knows? Hindsight's always 2020, right? But thank you all so much for listening and watching. If you made it this far into the video, guys, we
join the Discord. If you made it this far in the video, join the Discord because you can hang out with us a lot more in there.
And I will say, you guys saw the ad earlier. We have our first sponsorship deal ever. And this is huge for the channel. We're trying to make a push, trying to see if we can turn this thing into a little bit more than just a little side hobby that we do to annoy our wives. So look, Manscaped, we legitimately do recommend it. They sent us these and I was blown away. I'm not going to try to sell you on it too hard, but use code DMS, get 20% off, free shipping. It's an absolute steal. And honestly, It supports the show in a huge way. But Alex, I think that's it. We'll see y'all next time. Peace.